Seniors, before you watch one more minute of anything else today, I need you to stop and check one document. It takes about 5 minutes. It's sitting inside your own Social Security account right now, and most people who check it find a mistake that has been quietly shrinking their monthly check for years. This isn't a one-time bonus. This isn't free government money you apply for once and forget. This is a correction that raises your actual monthly Social Security payment every single month for the rest of your life. The document is called your Social Security Earnings Record, and in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly why it matters, exactly how it gets wrong, and exactly how to fix it before you lose another dollar. My name is Richard Hoffman, and I'm a certified retirement income planning professional. I've spent close to 2 decades helping people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s untangle their Social Security benefits. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. The system does not protect you. It records you. It calculates you. But it does not double-check itself on your behalf. That job belongs to you, and almost nobody does it, because almost nobody knows they're supposed to. Let me explain exactly how your check gets calculated, because once you understand this, you'll understand why one small error can cost you tens of thousands of dollars over a retirement. Social Security does not simply add up everything you've ever earned. It takes your 35 highest earning years, adjusts every one of those years for wage inflation, so older dollars are worth their modern equivalent, and then averages them together. That average becomes the foundation of your monthly benefit. 35 years, not 30, not 40, exactly 35. And here's the part almost nobody realizes. If you worked fewer than 35 years, the missing years don't just get skipped. They get counted as $0 and dropped straight into that average, dragging it down. And if even one of your working years was recorded incorrectly, too low, or missing entirely, that single bad year gets averaged in exactly the same way a 0 would. One wrong year, sitting quietly in a 35-year average, pulling your number down for the rest of your life. Now let's put real numbers on this, because vague warnings don't change behavior, but math does. Imagine your earnings record has a single year where your reported income was understated by $10,000 due to a clerical error at an old employer. Run that through the formula, and that one error can lower your monthly benefit by roughly $40 to $60 a month, depending on which year it fell in and how it shifts your average. That might not sound dramatic until you multiply it. $50 a month is $600 a year. Over a 20-year retirement, that's $12,000 gone, silently, from one single year of bad data. Now imagine 2 or 3 years affected, which happens more often than you'd think, especially for people who changed jobs frequently or worked for small employers. A $100 a month error is $1,200 a year. Stretch that across 20 years of retirement, and you've lost $24,000. Stretch it across a couple's joint life expectancy, and you're looking at numbers that could have covered a home repair, a grandchild's education fund, or years of grocery bills, money that was legally yours, just never paid out, because nobody checked the paperwork. Let me tell you about Margaret. Margaret was 66 years old, recently retired from a 31-year career as a school administrative assistant in Ohio. She'd been collecting her Social Security for about 8 months when her daughter, who works in payroll, asked her a simple question. "Mum, have you ever actually looked at your full earnings history?" Margaret hadn't. She logged into her My Social Security account that weekend and found that 3 years in the early 1990s, when she'd worked for a small private school before it was acquired by a larger district, showed 0 income. The school had existed. She had pay stubs in a shoebox in her closet to prove it. But somewhere between 1991 and 1994, the wage reports never made it into her federal record. She filed a request for correction of earnings record, attached copies of those old pay stubs, along with a W-2 she'd kept from 1993, and 4 months later, the Social Security Administration recalculated her benefit. Her monthly payment increased by $87. Backdated to her original filing date, she received a lump sum correction of just over $600, and going forward, that $87 a month for the rest of her life added up to over $1,000 a year she had simply never been getting. Then there's Raymond. Raymond spent 22 years as a long-haul truck driver before switching, in his 50s, to working independently as a self-employed equipment hauler. Self-employed workers report their own earnings, and Raymond's accountant at the time had made an error on 1 year's self-employment tax filing, understating his net income by close to $14,000. Raymond didn't catch it. The IRS didn't catch it, and because Social Security earnings for the self-employed flow directly from those tax filings, that understated year sat in his federal record for almost a decade, quietly lowering his eventual benefit calculation. When Raymond turned 65 and started researching his retirement numbers more carefully, he requested his full earnings statement, found the discrepancy, pulled his original Schedule SE from that tax year, and filed an amended correction with the Social Security Administration along with his tax records. The result was a monthly increase of $71. Over his projected retirement, that single correction was worth roughly $17,000 he would otherwise have walked away from forever. And one more, because this pattern shows up constantly and deserves its own story. Linda worked for almost 2 decades under her maiden name before remarrying in her 40s and legally changing her last name. When she updated her information with Social Security at the time, a clerical mismatch caused 2 years of earnings under her previous name to never properly link to her updated record. She didn't find out until she requested a full earnings printout in her 60s and noticed 2 suspiciously thin years sitting right in the middle of an otherwise steady income history. After submitting her marriage certificate, her old W-2s, and a formal request for correction, those 2 years were reattached to her record. Her adjustment added $52 a month to her benefit, not life-changing on its own, but compounded over a 25-year retirement, that's somewhere around $15,000 she had been entitled to all along. Margaret, Raymond, and Linda didn't have anything unusual happen to them. What happened to them is ordinary. It happens constantly, quietly, and almost always without a single notification, letter, or phone call from Social Security telling them anything was wrong. That's the part I need you to sit with for a second. The Social Security Administration does not proactively review your earnings record for errors. There is no automated alert system tapping you on the shoulder to say, "Hey, this year looks off." There is no annual audit looking out for your interests. The system simply records what employers and tax filings report, and if that data was ever wrong, incomplete, or never properly linked to your name, it stays wrong until you personally catch it and personally request a correction. This is not a hidden conspiracy. It's simply a system that was never designed to check its own homework, and an institution that has no obligation, and frankly no mechanism, to tell you when your number might be lower than it should be. So who is most at risk of having an error sitting in their record right now? People who worked for small businesses are high on this list, because smaller employers historically have had more inconsistent payroll systems, more reporting errors, and in some cases, simply failed to report wages to the Social Security Administration correctly or on time. Self-employed workers and independent contractors are especially vulnerable, because your earnings record depends entirely on accurate self-reporting through tax filings. Any accountant error, any missed filing, any miscalculated Schedule SE flows directly into your permanent federal record, with no second set of eyes checking it. People who change jobs frequently face a higher risk simply because of volume. Every employer transition is another opportunity for a wage report to be filed late, filed incorrectly, or never filed at all. The more employers in your history, the more chances for a gap. And women who have changed their legal name, whether through marriage, divorce, or any other reason, face a uniquely common error. Earnings recorded under a previous name sometimes fail to properly merge with the updated Social Security record, leaving entire years effectively orphaned and uncounted, exactly like what happened to Linda. If you fall into any of these categories, The odds that something in your record deserves a second look go up significantly. But honestly, even if none of these apply to you, this 5-minute check costs you nothing and could be the difference between leaving money on the table for the rest of your life or claiming what you actually earned. So here's exactly what to do, step by step. First, go to ssa.gov and create or log into your My Social Security account. This is the official government website, not a third-party service, not an app that charges a fee, just the real ssa.gov. If you've never created an account before, you'll need to verify your identity with some basic personal information, which takes just a few minutes. Second, once you're logged in, locate your full earnings history. This is typically found under your Social Security statement, where you can see a year-by-year breakdown of every dollar of taxed earnings the government has on file for you, going back to when you first started working. Third, go through that list slowly and carefully. Look for any year that shows 0 when you know you were working. Look for any year where the number seems dramatically lower than what you remember earning. Look especially closely at years around job changes, name changes, or periods of self-employment, since those are the highest risk points for errors, exactly as we just discussed. Fourth, if you find a discrepancy, you'll want to gather supporting documentation. Old W-2 forms, tax returns, pay stubs, or any official wage records from that time period are exactly what you'll need. And here's something most people don't know. The Social Security Administration can often help retrieve W-2 wage information going back as far as 1978 if you don't have your own paper records anymore. So don't assume a lack of old paperwork means you're out of options. Fifth, file what's called a Request for Correction of Earnings Record. This is a formal request submitted directly to the Social Security Administration, asking them to investigate and update the specific year or years in question. Attach whatever documentation you've gathered to support your claim. And finally, be patient but persistent. Corrections can take a few months to process, but if your claim is accurate and well documented, the adjustment becomes permanent, and it can apply retroactively, meaning you may receive a lump sum payment for past underpayment in addition to your increased monthly amount going forward, exactly like we saw with Margaret. Now, if you're not comfortable doing any of this online, or if a parent, grandparent, or older relative in your life isn't an internet person, none of this requires a computer. You can call the Social Security Administration directly at 1-800-772-1213, speak with a representative, and request your earnings record and the correction process entirely by phone. You can also visit your local Social Security office in person and have a representative pull up the record and walk you through the next steps face to face. If you have a family member who's comfortable with this kind of paperwork, this is exactly the kind of task worth asking for help with. 15 minutes of someone else's time could be worth thousands of dollars to you. One more thing I need to say clearly, because where there's money involved, there are always people looking to take advantage. This process is completely free. You never need to pay anyone, not a company, not an individual, not a so-called Social Security recovery specialist, to check your earnings record or file a correction on your behalf. If anyone ever contacts you asking for payment, a processing fee, or your personal banking information in exchange for fixing your Social Security record, that is not a real government service. Hang up, ignore the email, and remember, the real process costs you nothing but a little bit of time. This is the kind of thing that never makes headlines, because there's no dramatic news story in a quiet clerical fix from 40 years ago. But for Margaret, for Raymond, for Linda, and for potentially millions of people just like them, that quiet 5-minute check turned into a permanent increase in the income they'll rely on for the rest of their lives. Your Social Security check is one of the most important financial foundations of your retirement, and it deserves the same 5 minutes of attention you'd give to checking a bank statement. If this video helped you, do me a favor and check your own earnings record today, while it's fresh in your mind, because most people watch this, agree it's important, and then forget by tomorrow. And if you have a parent, a sibling, or a friend who's already retired or getting close to it, share this with them directly. This is exactly the kind of information that's far more valuable coming from someone who cares about them than something they'd stumble across on their own. Make sure you're subscribed, because in the next video, I'm going to walk you through a second commonly missed benefit, one specifically for people who were married for 10 years or more, even if they're now divorced, that many people don't even know they qualify for. You won't want to miss it.